All right, we are back. And what an incredible day of hockey. 4 great hockey games played at the Winter Olympics today. However, this video specifically is going to be about the Canada versus Czechia game, where Canada ends up winning 4-3 in overtime in a game that they probably didn't want to be that close. From being up early to being down after the first period to tying it up in the second to, with 8 minutes to go, seeming like all hope is lost, and within a matter of 5 minutes of game time between the third period and overtime, Canada rallies back and they advance to the semifinals. So let's talk about that game and what happens next for Canada and the semifinals going forward. So let's talk about that in a little bit more. So right out the bat, McDavid is flying, Canada's flying, and it ends up with McDavid taking the puck off of David Pastrnak in the Czech zone, and he makes a drop back pass to Celebrini, who doesn't really get everything on this shot, but it's more of a placement shot, and it gets past Lucas Dostal, and it is a 1-0 game early. Canada probably riding high, especially after beating Czechia in the preliminary round 5-0. And then Canada continues to pressure. However, at about the 8-minute mark into the first period, you get a play where, if I call back on my video that I made about a month ago about Canada losing to Czechia in the World Juniors, I talked in that video. If you want to go check it out, it's going to be in this corner here. But if you missed that one, I'll briefly explain what I talked about in that video. The idea that I had was that Czechia beat Canada because Canada was playing more east-west style hockey, whereas Czechia was playing more north-south, more physical, and really trying to use the rush to their advantage and capitalizing on turnovers that Canada made. And that ended up being successful for Czechia at the World Juniors. Again, they ended up beating Canada. They made it to the gold medal game in that tournament. And in this goal, I think you see the idea of Czechia doing this all over again, except on the men's side. They definitely came into this game with a very similar ideology of, we're going to make them turn the puck over and we're going to capitalize on the rush chances, because they are a bit more east-west than north-south at times, and we're going to capitalize on those opportunities. And they do that here. Mark Stone tries to make a cross-ice pass over to the left-wing boards, and the Czech players, or I forget which one it was, it might have been Gudis, I believe, actually intercepted this pass, and he skates it in, and they get a shot on, and Sedlak ends up getting the goal here to tie it up at 1. So capitalizing off a bad turnover from Mark Stone, plus Mark Stone then takes a little bit to change there, a bit of miscommunication between him and Marchand, and Czechia capitalizes on that. They score. It makes it a 1-1 game. Then there's a penalty for holding on Jan Ruda. Canada doesn't convert on that power play. And then there's a penalty on Macklin Celebrini for interference, which at the time kind of seemed a bit up in the air. The idea was that Macklin Celebrini and I forget the Czech player, they were battling for an icing, I believe, and Macklin and the Czech player's just all over Celebrini, and Celebrini ends up having to drive him into the boards. He gets an interference call, bit up in the air there, but it's whatever. However, it's actually not whatever, as about a minute into that power play, Hronek sends over a pass to David Pastrnak, who's in his spot. He wires home a one-timer. It is a 2-1 lead for Czechia heading into first intermission, and probably a scenario that Canada did not expect themselves to be in. Sure, at the World Junior level, Czechia kind of has had Canada's number recently. They've beaten them in 2 straight World Juniors, and while those are definitely upsets and Canada is not expecting to lose to Czechia at the World Juniors, in a best-on-best tournament, you are not expecting to have to battle your way out of a deficit whatsoever when it comes to facing Czechia. Yes, they've got great players. They got Marty Nikic. They have David Pastrnak. They got, like I said before the tournament even started, a fantastic 1-2-3 in net of Dostal, Vizmelka, and Vladar. But realistically, this is a Canadian team of all-stars. They should be beating them pretty handily, or beating Czechia pretty handily here. Instead, they go into first intermission down a goal. And for the first half of the period, that lead holds until there is a penalty to Michael Kepney for interference. There's a puck battle along the boards, and he cross-checks or kind of hits Nathan MacKinnon from behind. MacKinnon does kind of fall a little bit easily, but it's one hit or one cross check to McKinnon's back, and then another one afterwards. McKinnon falls, and that's what ends up getting called. And on that power play, McKinnon ends up wiring home a shot after Celebrini and McDavid, they make a little pass and they change roles where Celebrini was in a position on the power play down low. McDavid ends up switching spots. He's on the boards, and then McDavid is down low. Celebrini is on the boards now. McDavid sends a pass over to McKinnon. He wires one home. It is a tie game. But you may be asking, why is Macklin Celebrini on the top power play unit? Well, it's because Captain Sidney Crosby, he ends up, it looks like trying to, after a shift where he got hit a couple times pretty good, tries to dodge a hit from Radko Gudas. Either tries to dodge it or he just straight up slips on the ice. However, he falls awkwardly on his right leg, and Radko Gudas, who's expecting to line up Crosby and put all of his weight into Crosby, ends up falling on top of him, so it worsens the incident to Crosby's right leg, and Crosby is favoring it. He ends up going to the bench. He's favoring it some more. He goes to the dressing room, is favoring that right leg. He ends up not returning to the game. However, shortly after, a penalty to Kempny and a goal for McKinnon, and all of a sudden, it is a 2-2 hockey game going into the third period. After Radko Gudas takes a penalty too, by the way. So Canada goes in to the third period with some time on the power play. And apparently in that second intermission, Sidney Crosby ended up talking to the team, probably told him that he wasn't going to come back for the rest of the game, but there was a notion in that locker room, according to John Cooper after the game, that they were not going to let this be Sidney Crosby's final Olympic game that he plays. They are not going to lose in Sid's potentially final Olympics. So that's what they carry heading into the third period. And the third period, for the most part, is very back and forth, but mostly Canada dominated. Canada ends up getting a lot of time in the offensive zone. They get some decent looks. However, like I said before, what ends up leading to Czechia's success is turnovers and then rushes. And that's exactly what happens here. Canada gets some pressure in the offensive zone. There's a pass over to Thomas Harley. He tries to shoot it, but it gets blocked by a Czech player in front. And then puck goes the other way, and you get an odd man rush with Andre Palat, who snipes it past Jordan Binnington. It is a 3-2 game with just under 8 minutes to go, or somewhere around the 8-minute mark of the third period. It is a 3-2 game, and you could probably feel all of Canada gasp and question what this would mean, a potential loss to Czechia would mean to Canadian hockey, especially when it's a best-on-best tournament, because again, yes, you lose to them in the World Juniors. That does mean something. However, in a best-on-best tournament with potentially what has been said is potentially the greatest roster ever assembled for a best-on-best tournament, and you don't even medal, that would be a massive, massive failure to Canada. So Canada, they need some guys to step up here. Their top dogs, they all put on a line of Celebrini, McKinnon, McDavid, but they aren't really able to get much going. Czechia is just playing ultra defensive, the defensive game of their lives, especially in the third period, to shut down that top line. And I remember saying during this game, this top line is getting nothing going, and I don't think Czechia is afraid of the rest of the team when McDavid and McKinnon and Makar are not out on the ice. So some guys needed to step up, and we get some pretty good shifts out of Seth Jarvis where he's playing the body, hard on the puck, and then you get Nick Suzuki and Brandon Hagel out there. Puck circles back to the point, shot on net, and Nick Suzuki, with the tip of his life, tips that one home. It is a 3-3 game. The roof blows off of whatever the arena is called in Milan at this point, because Nick Suzuki is a guy that stepped up in a crucial moment when it was necessary for this country, necessary for this game, and we head to overtime. And again, you're without Sidney Crosby, and through the first shift of overtime, the top guys of McKinnon, Makar, and McDavid are not able to get anything going, really. So you need a hero, and who do you call upon for this? None other than Mr. Big Game Mitch Marner, after receiving a pass from Macklin Celebrini, he rushes into the zone, takes all three Czechia players on at once, and he backhands it past Lucas Dostal in an incredible individual effort. He scores, putting Canada into the semifinals in a 4-3 overtime thriller that I'm pretty sure Canada was not expecting. And plus, I didn't really talk about him a lot through the whole game recap, but Jordan Binnington, there were a couple of sus plays. I didn't think his rebound control was incredible. There were some chances that he created off of bad rebound control. However, as it continues to happen, we doubt Binnington, and then he proves us wrong in the biggest moments, making crucial save after crucial save. After tying the game up at threes with a minute to go, makes an incredible breakaway save on Marty Nikish where he stops it with his stick. There's another chance in overtime pretty early on where he makes a big stop. I think it was on Nikish again. But outside of a few sus plays, Binnington, when it mattered most, made the saves that you needed. And then the other guys came up big, and Canada moves on to the semifinals. And I think the main takeaways from this game, or the main takeaway in my opinion from this game for Canada, is they need to play more of a north-south style of game against these heavy-hitting European teams or heavy forechecking European teams that are playing that north-south style. Going up against a team in Finland where they very much do that as well. They aren't the most talented team, but damn do they work hard. I say that like their team isn't full of NHLers, because it is. But we really need to stop with this east-west, trying to make that extra pass, turning over the puck, and then leading to an odd man rush type of BS that Canada has been doing, not just in the Olympics, but at the World Juniors and at other international levels. That just needs to stop going forward. On top of that, we need to be better in the face-off dot. I swear, in the third period, Canada at one point had lost 70% of draws, or like maybe it was since Crosby left the ice, they lost 70% of draws. You have an abundance of centers or guys that normally play center in the NHL. And if Crosby is your one guy that can win a face-off draw in a crucial situation, Canada might be in trouble against a team of Finland that has guys that are good in the face-off dot. And I think the final thing that Canada is probably worried about heading into the Finland game is the health of their team as a whole. You already have Sidney Crosby, who went down with an injury in this game. Again, we don't have an update on what is going to go on with him going forward in this tournament, whether or not he's going to continue playing or if he's done. We also know that Brad Marchand is going to be dealing with an injury for the rest of the tournament. Sam Bennett was pulled out of this lineup. I don't know if that was because of injury or if that was because they wanted to get Marchand in for the quarters. Either way, Sam Bennett's going to pull back into this lineup for the semifinals if Crosby is not good to go. They are getting Josh Morrissey back on the back end, and I think a guy like Sanheim probably sits in replacement for Morrissey, but the injuries are starting to pile up, and if you have to face a Finnish team without your captain and potentially be without your captain for the rest of the tournament, you got to figure out some decent line combinations going forward. But who knows? If Crosby feels like he's good enough to play, he will play. I just think it'll probably be in a bit more of a limited role, if I'm being honest. But I also don't want to go through this video and not give Czechia their flowers, because, like I said a month ago when they beat Canada in the World Juniors for the second straight year, Czechia is legit. They are that good. Their style of play is just kryptonite to teams like Canada, teams that play more of that east-west style. They are a hard-checking, north-south team that are completely bought into their system. They have talent that can really cost teams dearly, especially Canada. You got guys like Pasternak. You got Philip Hronek on the back end. You got really solid goaltending as well. Plus guys that you just don't expect to really be difference makers like Sedlak or Palat, who hasn't really scored much this season, and yet he scores a goal that could have put Canada away and put Czechia into a semi-finals appearance this year. But hats off to Czechia, an incredible, incredible game. They were playing with house money, and they did a fantastic job at pushing Canada to their limits. But let me know in the comment section below, what did you think of Canada against Czechia? What did you think of this game? What did you think about the games today as a whole. I will be coming out with a separate video about the other 3 games that took place today, but I just wanted to make a specific one about Canada versus Czechia. How concerned were you throughout this game? And going forward for the rest of the tournament for Canada, how concerned are you about potentially missing Crosby? And what do they need to improve on before a semifinals matchup with Finland on Friday? Let me know in the comment section below. That is it for this one. I did hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.